Alright, so today I want to cover the top 10 most popular genes in ball pythons. And if you actually asked a bunch of people, what do you think are the most popular genes, you'd probably get a whole variety of different answers. And I actually went over to Morphmarket, which is like the eBay of ball pythons. There's like hundreds of thousands of ball pythons over there. And I actually just looked at the sheer number of snakes with those genes in them. And I sorted from the lowest to the highest and kind of narrowed it down to just the top 10. As a matter of fact, the number 1 actually has 3 times as many snakes as the number 2 position, and you'll probably be surprised what is the number 1 gene as far as numbers over on Morphmarket. So today what I'm going to do is I want to jump over the internet and I want to show you the top 10 most popular ball python genes. Alright, so I'm going to jump over here on morphmarket.com, and instead of starting with the number 10 and keeping you in suspense all the way to the number 1 most popular gene, I'm actually going to just start right out with the number 1 most popular, and that is the PASTEL. Believe it or not, this is the number 1 most popular gene in all of ball pythons, just looking at the numbers over here in Morphmarket. And if you're wondering how many pastels are over here, I actually added them up, and there's actually different sections of Morphmarket. I added up the US section, the European section, and the South Africa. And for pastels, coming in at number 1, it is 51,261 pastels. It's like a small city. It's pretty amazing how many pastels are actually over here on Morphmarket. And essentially what the pastel is it's kind of a probably one of the best, really inexpensive genes you can get. Usually they sell for almost nothing. You can pick them up for usually under $100, and the pastel brings in a lot of yellow, and it really reduces the pattern. Sometimes it jumbles up the pattern a little bit. And as far as my favorite pastel, I actually, a lot of my favorites, I was actually struggling for a while. All right, my number 1 snake out of hundreds of thousands of snakes that actually have, pastels, actually 50,000 snakes. My number 1, I decided, is this one right here, the pastel clown. And the reason I chose this one is because I think out of all the single genes out there that I can actually mix this with, the clown is probably affected the most by the pastel. And just look at this crazy snake. Just by adding pastel into the mix, it really jumbles up and completely converts the clown into this really crazy combination. That is pretty awesome. As a matter of fact, if you look at the price on this one, $300, which is pretty amazing. Actually, when I started in ball pythons like 5 years ago, I think these were selling for like $1,500. I was like, man, I wish I could afford that. And now they've come down to where they're almost nothing compared to where they were like, a couple of years, 5 years ago when I started. It's pretty amazing. So here is the number 2 ball python as far as being the most popular over here on Morphmarket. This is the yellow belly. And if we look at the numbers on the yellow belly, there are 17,867 yellow bellies over here on Morphmarket. And at first you're probably looking at the snake, you're probably thinking, that looks like a normal ball python. How could that be the number 2 most popular? And the reason it is it's kind of a sleeper morph. If you actually look at yellow belly by itself, it looks almost like a normal, but if you actually mix it in with other genes, it really shines and can make some really impressive combos in a lot of these combinations. As a matter of fact, if you look at the asphalt and the freeway and some of those combos, you can really make some amazing combos. And if you actually look at the yellow belly, a lot of people confuse normals with yellow bellies, and there are some ways you can actually pick out the subtle markers of the yellow belly, and I can kind of share a few with you here. One of the things that a lot of people look for in a yellow belly is you can't really see it too good in this snake, but it has this line right on the top of the base of the tail. Sometimes you can actually have that on normals too, but if you actually have all these little markers together, you can actually have a good probability of having a yellow belly. So you have the line on the tail, and a lot of times you'll actually have these little flames. You see little flames coming up right on the sides, kind of up from the belly. That is a pretty telltale sign that you have a yellow belly. And a lot of times the background in the yellow belly is a little bit darker than a normal, although I've seen some really dark normals. And another thing with the yellow belly is you'll have a little bit of a faded spot usually on the head, and then on the belly it's not always yellow on a yellow belly, but a lot of times even if it isn't yellow on the belly, a lot of times you'll have like a white belly, and then on the sides of the white it'll be really busy on either side of the belly, and that's kind of another marker for yellow belly. It's kind of a difficult morph to actually identify. And as far as my favorite yellow belly combination, this has got to be one of my favorite combos here. This is actually, yellow belly really shines when you mix it with brightening genes like pastel and orange dream. So this is actually the pastel ENCHI orange dream yellow belly. Makes for a really bright, really clean snake. And the ENCHI really reduces the pattern. I really love this combination. If you're going for the bright and flashy snakes, yellow belly is a must. So here, this is actually taking the number 3 spot as far as numbers. The spider is actually coming in at 15,979 here on Morphmarket. 15,000 spiders, number 3. It's pretty amazing because the spider, you know, a lot of people kind of dog on the spider because of the neurological issues. And as a matter of fact, in some reptile shows over in Europe, they actually ban the sale and display of spiders because of the neurological issues. And even with all that against it, it is still the number 3 most popular gene in all of ball pythons. Pretty amazing. And if you look at the spider, it almost looks like there's multiple genes in the mix. It almost looks like you have calico and ENCHI and maybe some pastel or something in there. And believe it or not, it's just one gene. You breed a spider to something else, half the offspring come out as spiders. And as far as my favorite spider combo, let me tell you, there was a lot of different combos to choose from. As a matter of fact, there was 15,000 different spider combos to actually choose from. And I actually picked out my favorite one here. I think this is my favorite right here. This is actually an axanthic spider, and it also has some other genes in the mix that really cleans it up and really makes it super, like a super bright white background. So if you actually take the axanthic and work in the fire, the yellow belly, and the pastel, you know, usually if you have fire, yellow belly, and pastel, and you work it into a normal snake, it really brings out the really super bright, flashy snakes. But if you work it into axanthic, it works just the opposite. It really brings in like a chalky white, super white background, and then you can add other genes on top of it and then make some really dramatic combos with these genes. And I'd say this is probably an expensive snake right here. This one actually sold for $3,000 if you're thinking about getting into axanthic. So essentially on this one, you have a lot of genes. It's really hard to hit. This is, you know, the yellow belly, the spider, the pastel, and the fire, and then you have 2 copies of the axanthic. So essentially it's a 6 gene combo. Really pretty tough to actually hit it, and pretty tough to actually reproduce it too. So ENCHI comes in at number 4, believe it or not, ENCHI with 15,898 ENCHIs over here on Morphmarket. And ENCHI goes well with anything. Anything is better with ENCHI. It's pretty amazing. ENCHI, essentially what it does is it really reduces the kind of reduces the pattern. Almost, it depends on the line of ENCHI. Sometimes you can almost turn it into tiger stripes, and sometimes it's almost like a normal that is slightly reduced. Depends on the line of ENCHI. And some ENCHIs are really super bright like this, and I'd say most ENCHIs to a certain degree will bring out a lot of the yellows and oranges in a lot of combos. And as far as my favorite ENCHI combo, take a look at this. This is actually something new that just popped up just recently over here on Morphmarket. This is actually the ENCHI Acid Desert Ghost. Pretty amazing combo. I just love how clean and defined this thing is. And I think it's kind of an interesting combo because the ENCHI and the Desert Ghost, I think, are responsible for most of this pattern. And the kind of the weird thing is usually when you add acid, it really explodes the pattern and really shatters it. So I'm kind of surprised you actually add acid to the mix, and it really is holding it together, probably from the Desert Ghost. And this, it almost seems like the acid is even brightening the kind of the background, and it's just kind of one of the most impressive snakes that I've seen. As a matter of fact, I've actually seen some like this that are similar to this, working desert into the combo. And desert, you kind of have to stay away from the desert because the desert has a problem with the females not being fertile. A lot of people don't breed deserts anymore, but the Desert Ghost is perfectly fine. The Desert Ghost is a recessive, so it's a little bit harder to actually hit this combo too. So here is the Mojave. The Mojave is actually coming in at number 5 with 13,433 Mojaves over here on Morphmarket. It's pretty amazing. The Mojave is actually in the blue-eyed leucistic complex. So you breed 2 Mojaves together and you get an all-white snake with blue eyes. And the Mojave, I was actually looking at my favorite Mojave combo over here. And the first thing that comes to mind when I think of Mojave, that is the DJI Mojave. And take a look at this thing. It's kind of interesting. You look at these pictures, and these pictures don't really do the snake justice. I've actually seen some of these in real life, and they are super, almost like a velvety jet black with a really super bright yellow on top of the snake. And it's almost impossible to capture on film because of the high contrast between the dark and the light. And a lot of these are either overexposed or underexposed. This is probably the best picture that you can actually get of a DJI Mojave. So here is the pied, and it's pretty interesting. A lot of people think, all right, you know, pied and clowns are number 1 as far as the most popular genes. As a matter of fact, clown isn't even on the list in the top 10, which I thought was pretty surprising. And pied's coming in at number 6 with 13,179 pieds over here on Morphmarket. And essentially what the pied is, it's a recessive mutation, and it brings in these splotches of white in the mix. And as far as my favorite pied combo, take a look at this one. This has got to be my favorite right here. This is probably my favorite snake over here with the pied combo on all of Morphmarket. This is actually a panda pied, which is a super black pastel pied. And it's kind of interesting with the super black pastel how it really makes the black splotches really super inkjet black, and a really sharp division between the whites and the darks. And this is, I'd say it's kind of hard to actually hit a really good looking panda pied, because I'd say in most cases panda pieds, a lot of times they actually come out completely white, or in some cases they'll actually come out with just a little speck of black kind of here and there through the snake. It's kind of a hard combination to actually get a really good looking snake. I'd say this is probably the best panda pied that I've ever seen over here. As a matter of fact, this price on this snake, this was actually sold for $10,000. Pretty amazing. Back in 2016, they're really holding their price still, even since it's been 4 years since this snake actually sold. So this is the banana. The banana is actually coming in at number 7 with 13,072 bananas over here on Morphmarket. The banana used to, you know, a lot of people thought the banana when it first came out was actually another version of albino, until they found out it was actually a co-dominant morph. So you actually breed this to something else, half the offspring come out as banana. And kind of the weird thing about banana is that the gender of the offspring are associated with the original pairing of the parents. So some of them are male makers, some of them are female makers, which is a really complicated topic if you actually dig in deep. I actually have a male maker that if I actually breed it to something else, all the bananas that come out of that offspring from that parent are actually all males, and I almost never get, so far I haven't got any males out of any of my bananas. It's pretty amazing. So if you actually look at my favorite banana combo, this was really easy to pick out my favorite banana. My favorite banana out of 13,000 bananas. I went right to it, and I wanted to show you this one. This is really amazing. Take a look at this crazy snake. This is a banana Mardi Gras. This thing doesn't even look real. It looks like someone made it out of plastic or something. It's crazy. And essentially what this is actually a freeway, which is an asphalt yellow belly. And then if you actually add ENCHI to the freeway, you get the Mardi Gras, and then you add banana and you get this really crazy snake. As a matter of fact, this one was really expensive too. This one actually sold for $10,000. A lot of these are really high-end, super high-end. It seems like $10,000 is the going price for a lot of these really high-end combos. So this is the fire. The fire comes in at number 8 with 12,465 fires over here on Morphmarket. If you actually take a look at the fire and compare it side by side with a normal, you can definitely tell the fire has more of a creamy, kind of a yellow color and kind of a reduced pattern compared to a normal. And fire, usually when you mix fire in with other genes, it really lightens and brightens the background. A lot of times it really kind of fades out the backgrounds. It's a really really versatile gene. You can use it in a lot of different ways. And as far as my favorite fire combo in all of Morphmarket, take a look at this. This is probably my #1 favorite right here. Take a look at this crazy snake. This is a super fire. And if you actually breed 2 fires together, 25% of the time you get a super fire, and sometimes the super fires are completely white, and sometimes they have little splotches of yellow, and sometimes that yellow is not really as bright as this one. This is probably the most yellow and the brightest yellow that I've seen on any super fire over here on Morphmarket. And these are pretty reasonable. This one actually sold for $450, so not crazy pricing on the super fires. So Pinstripe is actually coming in at #9. Pinstripe is coming in 11,930 pinstripes over here on Morphmarket. And I'd say as far as, you know, just a standalone morph, the Pinstripe is one of my favorites because it's actually the brightest gold snake that you can actually get. If you actually handle like a hatchling pinstripe, it's just like glowing bright gold. It is a pretty amazing sight. It's kind of unreal. And as far as pinstripe combos, you know, I always like to keep the really bright gold when I mix it with combos. So I think this is my #1 combo here. Take a look at this one. This is actually the acid pinstripe spot nose. So essentially what this is it keeps all the gold color, and then you add the acid and the spot nose together, and it really just explodes the pattern of the pinstripe into all these little freckles all over the snake, but it really keeps the bright gold pattern. And this one is probably pretty expensive because of the acid. This one actually was it's actually still for sale, $3,000. As a matter of fact, I'm thinking about getting into the acid project, but you know, right now I don't think I can afford a $3,000 snake. And it's a lot of people say the acid is the same thing as the confusion, and let's see, there's another one in there that's actually the same. The acid, the confusion, there's another one, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but there's several genes that people think that are pretty much different lines of the same gene. It's the static, the acid, and the confusion that a lot of people consider them to be different lines of the same gene, or maybe possibly they are the same gene. It's kind of an interesting, when you add those genes into combinations, it really explodes the pattern, pretty much like no other gene can really explode them. So here's the last one I want to show you. This is #10. This is the lesser, coming in at 10,457 lessers. And lesser's actually in the blue leucistic complex as well. And when it comes to my favorite lesser, you know, it's pretty much everybody's favorite, and that is if you actually take a lesser and you breed it to a Mojave, you actually get the ultimate blue-eyed leucistic. That is the lesser Mojave. Probably one of my favorite, and probably everybody's favorite white snake. As a matter of fact, when I'm selling snakes at the reptile shows and I have a white snake in my display, everyone wants to come up and hold the white snake with the blue eyes. And there's a whole bunch of different ways. I actually sat down and calculated over 40 ways that you can actually make an all white snake with blue eyes. And the ultimate way to do it is to breed the lesser to the Mojave, because a lot of times you'll get like micro eyes where the eyes are really super small. And in some combinations you get bug eyes where it's really super big, kind of almost clown looking eyes on the combo. And if you actually breed the lesser and the Mojave together, you actually get almost perfect size eyes, and you get pretty much the purest white snake, a really stark white snake, probably the ultimate blue-eyed leucistic that you can make with any 2 genes. All right, so it is time for the question of the day. And Aliana Morales asks, how much does it cost for a super bamboo? And that is a very good question. As a matter of fact, I went over to Morphmarket and I was looking over there for super bamboo, and there's not even one listed. As a matter of fact, there's only been just a handful of super bamboos over on Morphmarket, and the prices have pretty much ranged from about $800 all the way to $4,000 for a super bamboo. And this is actually a bamboo around my neck. This is Bobby, and if I actually breed Bobby to another another bamboo, you can make a super bamboo, which is an all-white snake with blue eyes. It's another blue-eyed leucistic, and if you actually take that blue-eyed leucistic, breed it to something else, every single offspring will come out as bamboo. It's a pretty powerful breeder. And as far as prices, it really comes down to supply and demand. I've actually seen a couple on there sell just this year for about $1,000 a piece, and I'm thinking they probably could have got maybe twice that, or maybe even more if they actually increased their prices. It's kind of interesting, the whole prices of ball pythons, because it comes down to supply and demand and what people will actually pay for that. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll kind of sit down and figure out, all right, if I actually breed a super bamboo to something else, make a whole clutch of bamboos, how much money can I make on all those bamboos versus the cost of what I actually invested into the project. So you kind of have to look at the return on investment and kind of price the snakes as a percentage of the return on investment. Sometimes you can actually do that to figure out how to price your ball pythons. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.